The trenches. It is the German army that first engraves this fateful pattern on World War I. To hold the ground they gained in the war's first offensive, the Germans dig into the soil of France. They dig straight and deep, with man-high trenches and underground galleries for their horses, kitchens, and stores. The Allies, running out of ammunition, are also forced to dig to save themselves from the German guns. And no one foresees that this is the shape of things to come. Guns and automatic weapons become fixed in place to cover the enemy front, block every line of approach. War is frozen into a changeless pattern, defying the plans, the obsessions of the generals. Waves of men flung out of their own shelters to find some way through will keep meeting the stubborn barricades of the trenches. On the training grounds of England in 1915, apple-cheeked recruits and old soldiers are learning how to dig. This army that just a few years before had thrown its spades away, saying that entrenched warfare was a thing of the past. Now they are learning the anatomy of a trench, the novelty of warfare without movement. The model trench works. 40 yards ahead of the main trench, the listening posts for advance warning. Behind the main trench, a maze of support trenches and redoubts called strong points, intersected by traverses or zigzags, reserve trenches and communication centers. In theory, on the drill field, a neat and orderly design. In practice, in France, a disorder of slime, rubble, and mud. The Germans have purposely entrenched in the higher ground. In some sectors, the drainage from their trenches is pumped downhill into the Allied lines. Never before has France seen so much rain. Troops and country folk blame it on the artillery. They say the cannonading has loosened the skies. There is water everywhere, but little to use. Water is weight. And most of what is brought up to the main line, heavily chlorinated, is for drinking and cooking only. It is almost impossible to get rid of what a correspondent calls the great unmentioned fact of war, the smell of unwashed humanity. Ahead of the trench line is the belt of barbed wire, concertinas, double aprons, single aprons, row upon row in depth from 40 to 150 feet. Beyond, no man's land, the middle ground between the armies, where death takes no holiday. But it has to be crossed by raiders. Generals cannot stand inactivity. Prisoners to be taken, information to be gained. Usually the raiders go by night, occasionally, daringly, by day. There are hours when not a hostile sound is heard. And there are hours of incessant noise, days of thunderous fire, followed by nights aglow with fierce-looking flares and star shells. An infantryman comes to feel almost an affection for his trench. This is home, enfolding, protecting him. It is when he tries to sleep in his sodden clothing, boots on, rats and vermin crawling, that he reflects on his animal state, and misery closes on him like a shroud. For the wounded, there are no such blessings as plasma and sulfa. Two curses of the trench are shrapnel and shell shock. There is always something to fight. The enemy, the cold, ice, mud, and the sheer effort of getting supplies to within even a few hundred yards of the trenches. One of their songs says, "There's no relief from the war," but there is. Troops are spelled out of the line to a French village for rest and remedy. Inspection for trench foot, that painful product of wet and cold at the front. Relief means delousing. Immunity will be brief, even after the hottest possible bath. The steam chamber for all clothing. 24 hours later, back in the trenches, they'll all be crawling with lice again. The notorious cooties. And they'll be back with the rats. And no wit of man or training of dog finds any way to eliminate them. The favorite expression is Santa Fe Anne. Once it was French. Now everyone understands. What's the difference? Or, maybe I'll beat this game. And some of them will, at least for a while.